When you were young, did you like being alone? Did the sweet release of solitude often lull you into a hyper-relaxed state? Think about what you did when you were alone, how you felt, what you heard or saw. When I was younger, I liked to be alone. And one of the places I spent most of my time was a little game called Garry's Mod. Garry's Mod, or GMod, is a seemingly innocuous sandbox game. However, it has a wide range of customizability, Steam Workshop items, and other mods. Often I would while away the hours, burning the midnight oil as I placed ragdolls, props, and NPCs in all kinds of different maps. But one of my all-time favorite things to do in Garry's Mod was load up the workshop on Steam and see if there were any new custom maps. There's still a huge community of Source Engine map makers who consistently post new, original, and unique maps for anyone interested. I found myself enamored with maps like these. I would sometimes spend hours not even spawning or doing anything, just wandering around. It made me think, do other people do this? Have other people done this? Over the last few years, there seems to have been a paradigm shift within the Source community. GMod videos used to be silly, funny machinimas. Now we view the Source Engine, and by extension, its maps, as something disturbing almost. Why? I see something I used to love wandering around in now being painted as a terrifying and disturbing environment that now is to be feared. I have to ask, why is this? I'd like to make a case for Wanderlust, a feeling I would often get when exploring these maps, even the scary ones. In this video, I'll look at how these maps are set up, what they are originally supposed to accomplish, and how that affects general opinions about it today. Now, if you clicked on this video, you probably have a pretty good idea of what the Source Engine is, but just in case you don't, I'll provide a small crash course. The Source Engine is a 3D game design engine created by Valve Core. It's the successor to Valve's Gold Source Engine used to make the original Half-Life game, and the precursor of the most recent Source 2 engine. Using the Hammer World Editor, a design software that comes ready with any game made in the Source Engine, players can edit, create, program, and design their own levels and maps in Source games. Maps and levels are an extremely important part to any Source Engine game. The player character, NPCs, props, and events all need a place in the map to function properly. At its core, a map is a collection of walls, textures, lights, and scenery that is often meticulously and methodically placed with a purpose. The map only truly starts to come alive with all the other components mentioned previously. Most of the time, these maps are integrated into a game, creating the iconic scenes we know in titles like Half-Life and Portal 2. However, many of these community maps were created for the sole purpose of exploration and random gameplay. This isn't to say there aren't story-driven standalone maps made by community users. There are myriad horror, shooter, and other maps out there. And that's something I always admired about Garry's Mod and the Source modding community as a whole. There's always something for everybody. If you don't like what you see on the first page of the community workshop, keep clicking and you're bound to find something you like. Garry's Mod is an interesting example because, and we'll get into this more in depth later, the two default maps, GM Construct and GM Flatgrass, were deliberately made to be used however the player desires. And these are some of the most iconic maps made with the Source engine. GM Construct is another map that some nowadays consider disturbing or scary. Indeed, a lot of modded maps on the workshop add entities, sound effects, and spooky events to the map to capitalize on this digital urban legend of sorts. But why is this? Is it loneliness? Solitude? I'm not sure, and countless other videos have been made to answer this question, so it's not something we necessarily have to get into. Let's take a look at another game. How about one where each map is deliberately made to feel alone in? Let's look at Portal 1. Portal 1's a very interesting game to me. It can be best described as a narrative puzzle game. However, there are different secret areas and even some deliberate events in the game that are made to be disturbing. Of course, the most prominent example of this would be the Ratman rooms. These appear throughout levels in both Portal games and often provide some extra narrative lore that clues the player into what may have been going on before everyone in the test chambers was killed by GLaDOS. One thing I find particularly interesting in Portal 1 is not the fact that you're alone. There's a strange feeling of solitude that Portal 1 and even Portal 2 give me. One that's difficult to place and different from a game like GMod, Half-Life 2, or any other Source game. And I think it's the fact that I'm not supposed to be alone in this game, but I am. It's obvious that I'm supposed to be watched during the events of Portal 1. There are empty surveillance chambers looking over every test. Hell, GLaDOS is watching you for the entirety of the game's events up until the end, and until then, we don't even get to see her. There's this strange dissonance in Portal, one that straddles the line between being alone and being watched. It's odd, and yes, it's a little uncomfortable. There's also less of a compulsion to wander in this game. Unlike the Garry's Mod custom maps, it was designed to be played through, to be tested. I found myself more compelled to just go through the test as quickly as I could and finish the game. During the game, however, and especially later on when we start to uncover the Ratman rooms, there are some pretty creepy sounds and ambience that emanate throughout the entire map. Which brings me to my next point. Do me a favor. Load up your favorite map or level in a Source game, any game at all. Find a place where you're alone and really listen to everything. Take all of the ambience in. What do you hear? How does it make you feel? For this example, I'm going to use GM Big City, a custom map for Garry's Mod created by the user Bigwig. I've always been struck by the sounds of this map and how they make the map feel more alive in a way. City and traffic ambience, wind blowing in your ears, even this weird and difficult to place siren-like sound. Everything in a Source map works together. The entire world reacts to the player in these maps. You know, when you move forward, you hear footsteps. When you shoot a wall, you hear a ricochet. And sounds can, in a sense, trick us into thinking this map is more alive than it seems. The noise of the traffic makes us think that there's a line of cars just out of eyeshot or in the distance. And these noises are all fake. They're all here to present to you a thinly veiled facade of a more populous area. It's almost strange wandering around the entire city, only to find not a single person there's actually with you. It feels wrong, right? Like a once densely populated area vanished, all at once. When playing a Source game, we often don't realize that sounds are all around us. In fact, one would be hard-pressed to find a spot or an area in any of these games where there is absolutely zero sound. Of course, there are some exceptions, and some areas where the sound is so muffled one would think it's only silence. Now, I'm a little biased. I am a sound designer. Shout out to Prophetic Nightmares, go listen to my music. But the sounds of these games and maps seem to be important to understanding what these feelings are when wandering around certain areas. And the sounds of Source Engine maps have always been very distinct. What comes to mind for me immediately is the sound of the Garry's Mod menu and the tutorial widgets once you first load up a map. Half-Life, Portal 2, Left 4 Dead, TF2, all of these games have a very distinct sound library that is instantly recognizable within the community. And these are all sounds that a program like the Hammer World Editor comes with. What we see here is familiarity. The sounds contained within these maps give us a familiar feeling. Sometimes it's a welcoming and calm one, and other times it can be uneasy and disturbing. This is most evident when playing a map or watching an ARG designed specifically to be horrific. These sounds and visuals that are familiar to us are placed within an uneasy setting. Lots of maps have a ton of different sounds in them, but looking at this generally, we see many similarities. This is largely due to the restrictions of the program used. Some maps, however, have custom sounds and textures in them, and I will say that many of these completely custom maps often feel very different from their counterparts made in the Hammer World Editor. It's almost like a marionette being puppeteered. If the puppeteer was the framework of a Source Engine made level, and the marionette is the custom textures, assets, and sounds injected within, it feels different. Not bad, I would call it very unique. And tons of hours and passion have gone into these maps as well. It's just really interesting how different the Source Engine can feel just by changing a few things. In these games and levels, sound is very important. A feature of these games that is often overlooked in favor of other elements, but one that I recognize as hugely important to the design of these games. And sound is something I'm going to be bringing up a lot in this video. One of the other reasons I was so drawn to these maps was because much of the time, the creators would add secrets and hidden areas within. One of the things that enticed me so much about wandering around these maps was the hope that I would uncover some new place that I had never been before. One of the most famous examples of this idea is the secret area hidden behind a wall in GM Construct. It consists of some furniture, a doll prop, and a poster denoting the credits of the map. But the secrets of source maps don't stop there. Some maps, despite being sandbox levels, even have their own sprawling narratives hidden within. One of the first secrets that comes to mind is found in GMod 13 Hotels. This map is one of the most famous secrets in the community. Much like Portal, this secret is most often referred to as the Rat Man. I find it interesting, and honestly rather refreshing, that these map makers are taking the time and passion to insert these things into their levels. It provides an extra feeling of life. These maps feel actually lived in. Just like Easter eggs in other video games, even source games themselves, these secrets are often difficult to find. Sometimes they can't be found without no-clipping out the map or using a certain command. And these secrets can range in complexity, from something as simple as just an extra room, to the intensely complicated and elaborate ARG-like nature of the map GM Construct 13 Beta. In some maps, the secrets are silly and wacky fun, and in others, like the aforementioned GMod 13 Hotels, they adopt a more sinister or spooky tone. And this, like I said before, is one of the reasons I really enjoyed playing around in these maps, why I enjoyed the idea of just wandering around, treating it like my very own museum. And if I found out one of these secrets by myself, it felt like a gift that I had given myself.
have taken the enemy intelligence. Alert.
Take a look at this iconic map in Team Fortress 2. 2 Fort, a capture the flag map that was released with the game. It's a remake of its original Team Fortress Classic predecessor, featuring a red and blue fortress with a bridge in between them. Different entry and exit ways, stairs, and even a sewer system provide players with the ability to be creative and experiment with different ways of obtaining the enemy intelligence buried deep within the base. One subject I wanted to discuss when talking about this phenomenon was the feeling of exploring maps like 2 Fort, maps made for multiple users to exist in at the same time, levels designed for action and quick combat. Playing this game when I was younger, I often missed a lot of the design choices of this map. Maybe it was because I was a scout main, but I often spent most of my time just dashing to the intelligence that I never really stopped to look around. One thing that strikes me right away is the change in the sound design from one part of the map to another one. It's something that I think we take for granted when running across the map in a competitive multiplayer map full of players. The sounds of everyone involved almost drowns out the delicate and droning ambience of the map. It raises different questions. Instead of just thinking, I need to make a dash for the intelligence, or set up a sentry camp, or even just run around and kill as many people as I can, I start to ask myself, why is any of this even here? What story is this map trying to tell? And I think that's one of the most interesting parts of Source Engine maps like this. All of them have a narrative function as well as a gameplay function. Each of these maps in their own respects tells a standalone story. 2 Fort, for example, tells the story of rival faction teams and their secret bases of operation, clandestine operations in which both sides are trying to thwart and get the upper hand on. There are computer rooms whirring away, secret sewer tunnel entrances leading down into high-tech basements, while on the outside, an innocuous set of fortresses made to look like processing plants or some other building. Having taken the players out of Team Fortress, let's move on to another game. Let's see what happens when you take all the NPCs out of Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead often presents us with high-stress bloodbaths where dozens, if not hundreds, of the undead accost your character at all times. But what about the quiet portions of this game? Much like what happened with Team Fortress 2, I'm sure that when we load up a map without any NPCs, it will be starkly different. Well, first let's load up the game, and then let's load a map through console commands so we can use cheats. Enabling cheats, I then kicked all other players and made it so the infected wouldn't spawn. At first I was a little creeped out, but it's mainly because there was a random witch that had spawned the first time that wouldn't go away. But after accidentally dying, the witch disappeared and I was able to wander around on my own. While the absence of the infected NPCs makes the game lose its substance, these maps are really interesting. It does feel a little unnerving. This is probably due to the fact that it feels so much like you're in an apocalypse. There are random burning windows, gunshots and machine gun fire. The one thing I noticed is that this map is really quiet. The game feels different now, slower. Of course, we've essentially just created a walking simulator. Events that were supposed to spawn hordes now do nothing but slow down progress a little. Different areas that may be missed because of the frantic nature of the game can now be freely explored also. Another interesting mod that I've heard about but never played was the Half-Life 2 Alone mod. In the spirit of removing NPCs from source games, let's take a look at that. One thing that I immediately noticed about this mod is that it's not what I expected. I came into the game expecting the events to still occur as usual with everyone else just removed from it, as if disembodied ghosts were doing everything for me. However, the mod maker, Wanderlust, actually put a lot of work into not only removing the people, but anything that has to do with them. Cars are gone, train carts missing from levels, doors are left open, the entire world is now darker, and the flashlight more powerful. It seems that the sky is cursed with a perpetual dusk that bathes the entire world in a very muted neutral light. First I played through the train station section, up until the red letter day cutscene and the teleporter. I really enjoy how this is almost an entirely new story and narrative, one that is informed by the players themselves. Playing through this game, I had to ask myself, what happened? Why am I here? And in fact, it made me want to play the game more. So of course, I loaded up one of the most notoriously creepy maps in all of Source history. Playing through Ravenholm with the Half-Life Alone mod, I have to say, it's honestly not as creepy. In fact, I felt that feeling of Wanderlust more than ever. A lot of the Ravenholm section of this game is spent sprinting from fast zombies and launching saw blades at headcrab zombies with a gravity gun. Now, it's empty. Not even Father Grigori is here to cheer you on. Much like the mod decries, you are totally and completely alone. And it's kind of nice. Not even the graveyard was altogether scary for me. The first thing I noticed was the almost comical placement of weapons and ammo around the tombstones. Regardless of that, however, it was almost forlorn to wind around the fences and gates, stepping over the buried corpses where the undead once roamed. These specific maps, the ones made to be shared experiences, often feel to me like ancient ruins. Like I'm exploring a once bustling market square that's now a sparsely packed collection of run-down buildings and broken brick walls. It's the same feeling when you load up one of the old GMod RP maps. These were once full of different players getting up to wacky mischief and hijinks. They were places for people to live out a virtual life of sorts. These ones feel the most to me like ancient ruins. They're simple, meant to be benign, like any other village or city. It's something that once was a place of fun and friends, but is now isolated and empty. Looking at these maps, uncovering their secrets, it's like being an archaeologist or anthropologist exploring an ancient city. Some maps are deliberately designed to be like this as well. There are many ancient ruins custom maps in the GMod workshop. One specific one that comes to mind is Windswept. Windswept is advertised as a build and roleplay map, but loading it up, it becomes apparent that something more sinister was going on in this place. What's presented as a simple building gives way to a whole basement and mine area, eventually leading to an entire mining town underground. Lots of these areas were obviously designed for players to mess around in, but loading up the area alone, I did get an uneasy feeling playing around in this map. There's a lot of dark areas, inaccessible locations, and downright strange signs and posters. Even as a standalone building map, it works terrifically. However, exploring this map leads the players in all different directions. Deeper and deeper we go until we finally discover what's going on here. A thinly veiled facade of a mining operation covers up the truly sinister plot to uncover alien ruins. There's a lot to do with the exploitation of workers, governments lying to their people, and the cramped living spaces of the toxic, fume-filled mining town. Exploring these maps that were meant to be filled to the brim with people having fun and building things and role-playing with each other fills me with a deep sense of yearning. Like said previously, it feels like exploring an ancient ruin, something that was once alive and thriving, but is now stoic, dark, cold, and emotionless. Lots of single-player games have ways for players to send other players messages. We see this in From Software games like Dark Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring, but we also see ways of sending messages in open-world sandbox games like the Time Capsules and Subnautica. But there's another game that takes that concept and turns it into a narrative device. In fact, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Developed by Davey Wreden, the creator of the Stanley Parable, The Beginner's Guide is a more personal investigation of art and how it is consumed by others. It's a portrait of the death of the author, where Davey Wreden believes his friend to be clinically depressed and on the verge of maybe doing something drastic. In his effort to make Coda, his friend, feel better, he goes behind Coda's back to share his games with other people. This is a very simplistic interpretation of the game as well. There's a lot more subtext and meaning behind it that I will definitely explore some other time. Altogether, it's a really poignant and emotional story. I could make an entire other video on it, and if this video does well, I might. However, there's one specific part of this game I want to focus on, and the Garry's Mod Workshop mod that it inspired. In a specific part of the Beginner's Guide, you find a room filled with custom messages that are said to be left by other players. Each of these messages, called notes, are strewn throughout an area in the map. These messages are all fake. They aren't left by other players. However, I think this part of the game is reflective of what I'm talking about here. In the narrative, this part of the game is seemingly full of people just like me. People who just wanted to explore an area in a game. It's just that this time they can provide their own commentary on the game. And that leads us to the current topic, Echoes Beyond. Echoes Beyond is a Garry's Mod Workshop add-on made by Steam users Pancakes and Aspect TM. Taking direct inspiration from the aforementioned segment in the beginner's guide, the add-on adds an entirely new game mode to GMod, which allows other players to leave their own echoes on whatever map they want. The add-on even comes with a nifty little list of the most popular maps and where your own messages are. I've played around with the add-on a lot. In fact, it's the reason that I was inspired to make this video, because I found that a lot of these people were just like me. They loaded up this game mode so that they could wander around a map and passively interact with other players, commenting on their own experiences as well. These are meant to be anonymous, but some people provide their usernames within the message. Some are even famous within the add-on. What I see here is a lot of like-minded people who may have been exactly like me. Coming home from school, spending time alone, messing around in different GMod maps. Only this time, we can all see and interact with each other in a way. It's almost like a hall of mirrors, but where the reflections are all different, relatable amalgamations of ourselves. They aren't shadows of our past, but reminders that a lot of us are the same and share similar interests. Echoes Beyond encourages us to explore, to drink in the solitude of the different levels and maps we all love and love to spend time in. It encourages us to interact with each other, to talk and have fun. It's a reminder of who we all are. When I was young, I liked being alone. I didn't really do well socially in school or with my family. So I escaped through the endless amount of levels and maps found in the Garry's Mod Workshop. And in a way, it's kind of comforting to know that there were a lot of people just like me, and that I have a community that I can rely on to provide me with this sense of comfort and relaxation. All of these maps and games mean something to all of us. They probably mean something to all of you watching right now, however many people that is. And I just want to say, I'm grateful for that. And I'm happy to share this feeling with all of you.